Hi, Leonie. How are
Hello,
you?
Sonia. So, I guess excited to get it going further. So,
Great. We were talking last time about the mindset. You mentioned something about the Paralympic mindset of parenting a child with special needs. Could you tell us more about that?
well, yeah, I guess the Paralympic mindset is the one that kind of undermines very much the approach of the best parents, right? And that's one of those things which I really find the probably most, shall I say, heartbreaking that it's very often that the parents who are the best in the way that they're being the most committed, the most compassionate, the most engaged. So the natural choice for them is, well, I'm going to break through all these obstacles, I'm going to prevail, I'm going to win, I'm going to prove and show that my kid is able to achieve these unimaginable heights, and that's what it's worth dedicating life to, and so on. And the Paralympic, I call it the Paralympic mindset because basically it's epitomized by the Paralympic Games, right? And if you look also at any kind of representations that the popular media and movies and whatever, and the video clips, whatever you take it, right? So they really glorify that. You can easily imagine or think about, I don't know, like 10, 15, 20 movies or episodes there, TV series, and so where you get some scenarios like, well, a person, especially if it's a person who had some kind of, I don't know, car accident or any wounded soldier or anything, and then they first being filmed in bed, like all in sort of crisis and tears, and then they start training hard. They overcome the moments of weakness, and then first they kind of walk this parallel bars and their legs buckle and so on, and then eventually, at the end of the movie, the character throws his crutches away and walks out, right? Or this.
Well, that's like the typical stories that we see at the telethons.
Oh yeah, absolutely,
You know, kid
absolutely.
that finally could start walking.
Mm,
That's like the only happy ending possible.
that's it. So, but the problem with this Paralympic mindset, actually, the moment you put that magnifying glass on it, is multifold. On the one hand, it has to be understood that most of the cases of this kind of Paralympic type of achievements, those are the adults, or even if it happens to children, so it's usually would be more in their adolescence, some kind of injuries and so on, and then they kind of get out of that scenario of the disability into some level of ability and some sort of sports type of activity, but nobody really pays attention to what it costs and at the same time how it feels. Because if you listen to any of those Paralympic athletes, they are in pain, like there's everything aches, everything hurts, and then, like they present this moment of triumph for the external public, but the level of effort and sacrifice and so on that it takes is absolutely, you know, extraordinary. And it's really important to understand that you really can't expect this from each and everybody. So, on the one hand, I question the goal because it's not internal but external. But on the other hand, I question that sort of spread of this mentality and demand, putting it on each and every person. So because then what happens is that if you are not being able to deliver the super Paralympic effort, you kind of feel yourself guilty, underperforming, not doing justice to the true potential of your child, not being able to get the best, and so on and so forth. But it's the reality. You know, the reality is that in your life there are so many constraints, there are so many, let's say, other factors, whether it's your own health, whether it's your other children, whether it's your work, whether it's your, parents, whether, just who you are, right? So you see, it's not all just converging onto this Paralympic thing. So it's the same story that, the glorification of athletes. But we have to understand that anything has to do with sports and any kind of training that comes from the athletic and the sports, it's the process of selection that weeds out and kicks out the weakest. How do you get the people to become athletes that we admire? Those people who perform at, whether it's the World Cup of football or whether it's the people who perform, at any other type of the, sports, whether it's athletics or any kind of, these people came there via the means of selection. We see the tip of the iceberg. They are like 1 out of 100,000 who started. And then for one person who is on top, there are 99,999 who have been not able to achieve that. And for me, this is just bad statistics and the bad mindset. So what we actually have to be looking at is something a lot more realistic. What are the averages where, you can meet the connection to your child, so the connection of to your child and the quality of life of the entire family, the happiness of the family, doesn't require that super effort. And on average, actually comparing yourself to the Paralympic mindset is destructive. It makes the whole situation extremely fragile, right? And that's our main theme overall, right? So what is your situation inside the family? Is it fragile or is it steady, robust, consistent, happy? And my point is very simple. When it comes to the life with the child affected by developmental disabilities, it's the accumulation of the micro connections, micro achievements, micro links on a day-to-day basis that actually build that quality of life. It's not a single pinnacle event when you've been like Olympic athletes who've been training and sacrificing for 4 years in order to sort of have that moment of glory. It's not about the moments of glory, it's about the fabric of everyday life. And again, it's not about swinging into extreme and saying, oh, well, so shall we do nothing and just let the whole life drift as it is? No, it's not about that. Again, it's about being more precise and about the everyday process and work of looking at the opportunities to meet your child where they are, and actually to recognize their own initiatives, their own moments of creativity, their own openings, and those little loops of achievements, right? So which makes them happy. See, remember last time we were talking about situation with Rosia, right? Is that for her the greatest level of competence is her eating, right? And that basically for her the way where she can set the experiment and achievement and really build it comes at that particular domain. It's like how it's those little things. So how she takes in the spoon, how she mouths the food in, how she engages the lips, how she is able to hold the head during that process, how confidently she swallows, how well she feels the taste, and so on and so forth. So these little things, they are actually the process of achievement. And this is not something that you can sell to the external public as the moment of glory. But on the other hand, that thing alone, every single feeding, every single day, for those 4 or 5 times that she eats, that gives her like dozens of episodes when she can feel the taste of success, right? Feel the taste of success, feel the taste of fulfillment, feel the taste of being able to do things, but just at that level from where she started from. And at the same time, if we look at, the evolution that happened in the recent few months, you can see that that little thing, starting to look at her feeding, not as the process of just like fueling her and shuffling the food and the calories down her throat and her stomach, right? But actually looking at the process, how many other components have built out of that.
I've seen that with Rocio when we started exploring with her mouth, and it really makes me wonder the impact of this on her self-esteem.
Absolutely.
It must be so difficult for someone to, if every time, the entire day, everybody is asking you to do something you cannot perform, you cannot do. It must be very frustrating. So with Rocio, with this exercise that you taught me, with the noticing that feeding was her strongest, it has been very comforting to see how that has made her flourish, because now she's doing more things, a lot of more things with her mouth, but also that kind of extends to different areas. For instance, at school, everybody keeps saying, okay, she has to paint with her hands. Her hands can do nothing. They are floppy, they're not in the picture. So what can she do with her mouth? Let's store something there. And also the idea of, taking away the idea that feeding is just to feed, to give food. It's like, okay, she does this well, so how can we explore from this, and realizing that everybody only develops from what we have, not from what we do not have.
Exactly.
That sounds so basic, but it's like the other way around what we usually do with children with special needs.
Well, absolutely. That's my key point, right? Is that actually that's what that's why I would say that the Paralympic mentality is mainly is been destructive in so many ways. That where the best parents, just out of their best intentions and really with a huge self-sacrifice, so they kind of start a project where themselves, they see themselves as part of the project. The child becomes a part of the project, and they both, as the whole family unit becomes part of the project, and they basically judge their own worth, success, and whatever, they judge based on the success of this project. This is extremely fragile situation, right? And it's actually a good illustration to what we mean by fragility, right? Because, think about it. How many times things could happen that, for instance, like you've been trying to do all sorts of training and efforts and so on and so forth, and then bam, the child gets some, a cold. And then for a couple of weeks, plong, no training and so on, and then you just find out that everything that you thought you have achieved just goes down the drain. Or, the child just undergoes certain growth spurt. Or the child, has trouble with teething, or whatever other things. So, and then suddenly your entire project collapses again. So, you know, just building this Paralympic project is you have to understand this basic rule. Everything that has to do with the Olympic and Paralympic dream is the selection process. It's the combination of tons of lucky factors and so on to get and to climb on the top. It's a competitive mindset. And this is really, if we put the summary of this episode, so what is the key message there? Moving from the competitive mindset and externally oriented mindset to cooperative and internally oriented. The achievements should first come in the field where just you and your child, in that scenarios, in that situation of the magnifying, which is only seen through the magnifying glass, that's where you see the progress. And that's how you build that kind of starting point of competence, and then that starting point of competence, however small it is, but then gradually that point of competence starts expanding and growing and building up. So that's the key message in this episode, I believe.
A lot of things to discuss after this, but we will leave them for the next episode. Thank you, Leonid.
Bye.